Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our review of Halloween Ends.
You came here to kill me, so do it.
Okay, Luke, we are here. We have been talking about this for some time. This trilogy, man, this has been quite an experience, I gotta say. I mean, starting back in 2018, you and I, we were super stoked, super thrilled. I mean, like, we both had reservations. I was definitely not as cautious as you were when it came to that one. But we went and saw it, and needless to say, if you haven't checked out our 3 hour long podcast on both that and Kills, we were a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
It wasn't a horrible movie, but there were some choices that were very questionable, very just didn't fit right. Didn't feel good, didn't feel like Halloween. But it was something that's like we could grow past this. We could there is potential for everything to right the ship once they announced that they were moving forward with a trilogy and we were getting two more films. Then we have Halloween Kills last year, which again, to kind of recount is I went and saw that, and you stayed home and watched it on Peacock.
I did.
And I would say that I think, although not much in the vein of substance or story, a pretty enjoyable movie. It really knows what it is. It's really just is, as the title states, goes into those kills, and it like really just hits the gas and never lets up. And there were definitely some questionable decisions in that one as well, specifically the whole section involving the hospital and the other patients. And those were things that I was just like, okay, I'm not about it, but overall, I would say that I walked out of that, and as time has gone on, I enjoyed Kills more than 2018. So that brings us to this movie, where we just got out of seeing it. And Luke, I'm going to let you start us off here. So, how are we feeling about Halloween Ends?
Man, so like you were saying, there was always that potential there to right the ship. There was always hope. We never had the period at the end of the sentence yet, but going to Halloween Ends, that was our chance to get closure on this. To if there we were going to right the ship, get it on a good path, end on a strong note. Halloween Ends was going to do that. So we went into that theater really hoping to get something good out of this David Gordon Green trilogy, as it were. And overall, I'd say that this was a train wreck of sorts. This Halloween Ends, man. I really don't know what was going on in terms of writing and direction here. And 2018, we're not fans of, but I can see someone liking that film. And, I can't hate on anyone for liking that film because there's an idea there. There are intentions there. There's a story to be told, especially reigniting this whole 1978 Halloween. Halloween Ends just seems oddly directionless in a sense. It almost feels like they had no idea of where they wanted to go with this. So it was like, hey, what idea can we throw at the wall and let's see what sticks here. It really feels that in that fashion here of, I don't know where we want to go and how we want to end this, but hey, we have this third film and we got to get something on the paper, and they just went with it. And it really feels like that for the whole, hour 50 runtime here. It's like questionable choice after questionable choice. It just doesn't even feel in line with the other two.
Yeah, this movie, in my opening thoughts here is bold. It's I gotta, if I'm gonna give it anything, it's that they push a concept, and this is our spoiler free section. We will get into some of the spoilers, and then we're gonna do a bigger discussion video probably on Saturday once this has had some time for people. But yeah, this is a bold movie. Like, this was, and I, I've been quoted on this show. I can put myself out here for saying that I wanted something different from this franchise. I wanted something that wasn't as close to the originals or redoing tropes from the other films. Um, but the thing about that is, why take such a bold swing in the third act of a trilogy? Because my biggest problem now with this is that this movie feels nothing like its sibling films. Nothing
Yeah.
like those first two movies. You can watch Halloween 2018 and Kills one right after another, and I've joked about it a ton, but I think I might actually do it since I have the movies. Um, I You could cut those into one long movie, like one nearly 3.5 hour long movie, and it would all flow and be tonally consistent. The music would be consistent. Everything would work. This movie feels completely different. And I'm talking not just from a story's perspective either. Like, you got into that a little bit, but for me, I'm going to start by saying that even just from the way the characters are written, the way people act, the way that they decide to tell this story, the way they frame Haddonfield, it feels foreign. And it feels very much like, okay, if you were going to do this, why didn't you lay the groundwork for something like this 2 films ago? And like, I just don't understand why now you're deciding that we're going to take all these chances and we're going to do all this stuff and we're going to completely derail and disjoint everything. Because like I said, I wasn't pleased with every decision they made, but like, going into Kills, I made my peace with it. I decided, hey, this isn't really what I was looking for as far as them. They're sticking to it. They're going back to more or less the basics, and they're going to say, hey, we're just going to kind of give you guys some of what you've had before, but do it in a modern touch. I was fine with that, and I wanted them to really cap this off. I was saying it for the last couple weeks here. I just want to go into this movie, enjoy Michael Myers, enjoy the tones and the feelings of Halloween that they've given us so far. I made my peace. I accepted that it was probably going to rerun some things that we'd seen before, but alas, here we are. They did something different, but it's too late. You've just you shit this out, and it's like, you can't do that. You can't just like make something so vastly different in the third act. And I just can't really get my head wrapped around that after my first viewing here.
Yeah, well, and you talk about it being bold, and I guess for me necessarily, without going into the spoiler territory here, I don't really necessarily see it being that bold. Again, where you go into this whole 3 films of David Gordon Green here, we get tribute after rehash, after another tribute, and it's just like, even this main storyline that is more so unique to Halloween Ends, we get that, even if it's for a glimmer at the end of the very end of one of the scenes in one of the installments that we're supposed to forget about. They kind of just they elaborated on a little more and kind of run with the ball a little more. So I can't even give it that bold take there. Again, it just seems like something unoriginal, something that we're pulling from something we are supposed to forget about because we've rendered it not good enough or not in line with the story that we want to tell. But we're just going to rip other things from previous installments and kind of reformulate them and try to make them our own. So, like, for me, initially when I saw this concept that is supposed to be new to Halloween Ends, it's what my mind went to, because that installment is one of my favorite installments. So I'm going to remember that. So, for that, I can't even say it was bold in that aspect.
It's in, the way that I'm, I guess, framing that in my mind, in the way that I'm kind of, trying to use that term here, is in the sense of, in the context of this being the third part of a trilogy. It's like, why swing for the fences so hard right now? Like, that's what I mean by it's bold, in that sense of like, we are going to now take all these expectations, we're going to throw our entire story out, and we're going to start somewhere new, and we're going to start introducing a character who, by this point, you know, if you've seen the trailers, if you've been following any of this marketing, you kind of understand we're really getting at Corey here. This Corey Cunningham character that we've been talking about for months now, since the synopsis dropped, since the trailer dropped. He is that choice. He is that decision that they make to throw in here. And it is one of those things where it's just, it could have worked. It could have. And, I don't want to sit here and play into shoulda, coulda, woulda, but like it could have, I think, again, if this character was in earlier installments, if they would have maybe had laid the groundwork for this, you could have made this make sense. The reason I say it's bold is because it makes no sense. It
Yeah.
it is, and it's again, it's a concept that I don't really love. I especially the way that they go about showing it feels very ham-fisted and very lazy. And how they go about showing that concept, as opposed to the one that you're referencing. I'm fine with that. I enjoy that. I think that was a good move. But it's just one of those things where it's like, again, why are we doing this right now? Why are we? You could have just given us the swan song of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, but no, we had to put in all this stuff to make this film different, and to make this thing not as, I guess, as expected. It was their thought process and their angle on it. But again, just like every other thing that they've tried to do when it comes to this franchise and the way they take their stories, nothing. It really is that unexpected. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we're sitting there in the theater just talking to each other very hush hush quiet. I bet this is going to happen. Okay, this is going to happen. And we're just calling these sequences and these scenes that really ultimately, when they do resolve what's going on, and then we finally get to the movie that's been advertised with the Laurie Michael stuff, it all amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
And like, I just can't wrap my head around why this is how they chose to go out, and why this is the script and the story that they went with. And it's just, to me, it feels like, this of the three films, people can say what they want about our opinions on those first two. Bit nitpicky, maybe. I feel very secure in our review and our, opinions on this movie. I think that we're valid, but I could see people saying, well, you guys are being harsh. You're fanboys and you want something here. This is just the laziest and ham-fisted attempt of the three. And I did not enjoy myself watching this movie.
And this one for me, it's just like we've seen these instances before. I think in terms of this Corey Cunningham and what they're doing with it, and I'm trying to really dance around not doing spoilers right now, but in the one installment that I'm talking about that we're supposed to forget, we see it for really little bits. Even in the Friday 13th installment, we see it for a film, and it's like there's a reason why those things don't work. It's because no one really wants it. Someone can say that they want it. It's one of those ideas. I think I've talked about it. I don't know if it was on a podcast or Sunday Scaries, but it's one of those things where it's an idea that maybe works better as a comic book or a novel. It doesn't work in line with the franchise because there is a specific formula. If we're going to go Randy from Scream here, there is a formula that we need in order to make one of these successful films. And in Halloweenends, I think there is a big piece of that formula missing. When you watch it, you know what we're talking about, because that piece of the formula only gets a small bit of screen time when you're billing this as an epic conclusion of a certain saga and a feud that's been long standing for so long. And we only get that a tiny bit. We just talked about Halloween Resurrection and the underwhelming resolution that we get with Michael and Laurie there, so like in this one was supposed to be our redo, our restart, give us something that we're going to remember. And I don't think we get that here at all.
No, I definitely think that, to kind of wrap up our ideas here on this spoiler free section, just because there are other aspects I want to touch on. Um, but when we will return to that point once we get into spoilers here. Um, Other things that I took issue with. This to me of the three, and I know some people are going to say that it's probably kills. I think this is the weakest when it comes to most of the character writing. I think that there's a lot of dialogue sequences that are just so, I don't know, it's equal parts the delivery and the writing, where it's just kind of like, this just feels lazy, and this really just feels like they're sleepwalking through these scenes almost. None of these characters don't feel like the characters that we had before. It
Yeah.
almost seems like, in my mind, how this kind of runs is, with Halloween 2018, everybody was invigorated and fresh and ready to go. And, in the grand scheme of things, I think that that one has some of the better acting and some of the better delivery from characters like Sheriff, or not Sheriff, but Officer Hawkins and, other people. And, it's one of those things where it's like, as we go along here, they really just feel so slow and so like depressed and down, and it's not intentional. Like the conversations are supposed to be light and cute and funny, but like they're just so yeah, I'm just talking about this in a grocery store. It's like, it's just like, it just didn't work for me. I was kind of just sitting there going like, God, like this just feels painful, and the way this is being written and delivered.
And going into that delivery and stuff like that, I almost felt that it was over exaggerated in a sense where not genuine in the slightest. Where there's an emphasis kind of put on Lori in the story, and I mean, we all know this from the synopsis. That she's writing her memoirs, and we kind of get this voiceover with Lori for a little bit, and at one point in my head, I was like, this better not be some sort of recollection story that she's kind of sensationalized story in her head that's almost in the next installment as she's like writing a novel about Michael and maybe a random fictional instance because of the how ungenuine that a lot of these interactions were throughout this. I was like, it almost feels like uh, a novel being written by Lori, and I was like, if this turns out to be, we circle back and it's all been like her kind of doing a voiceover and sitting at her computer and writing Stand By Me style and all this other stuff, I would have been absolutely pissed. But it's like that's how this writing comes off, as if we're writing a novel and it's supposed to be over exaggerated and kind of fake. That's how a lot of the interactions in here feel. They just don't feel real to me at all.
Yeah, and I think that the actors themselves have proven themselves enough through this trilogy that, like, I know they can be competent. Not every scene in every single one of these movies works. And again, I have to put that on the writers and the direction. But like, I think that, the cast here again is strong. And it is one of those things where it's like they have the potential to really eat into some of this dialogue, but again, it just feels like everybody was just kind of either on autopilot or just had hit the brakes a little bit. And like, i I just wasn't feeling the crescendo here. I never felt and it's like, the swing that they take, the direction they take the story aside, when they get to the stuff that is advertised and we're waiting for, the Laurie and Michael showdown, it just feels bleh.
Yeah.
It feels unearned. It feels weak. And, there's this big fight scene that they advertise in every trailer. I mean, for God's sakes, I haven't watched live TV in, a better part of 10 years. And, the watching Chucky the last couple weeks and having these constant little snippets of the trailer for Halloweenends, and it being this grand fight that's like, oh, Laurie and Michael final showdown. When you get to that point in the movie, it's just weak, man. It just really falls flat. And it's like, okay, by the time that's there, I'm just kind of like, so how are they going to do it? How are they going to finish this out? And then when they do finally get to that point, I just could care less. I was just like, okay, whatever.
And
Okay,
it's
that's
funny you
fine, I
bring up
guess.
It's funny you bring up Chucky because, um, as soon as I got home, I was cruising Peacock because I know this is going to be showing on there, and I wanted to see if it was available yet, and it wasn't. Curse of Chucky popped up, and a thought popped in my head that I actually verbalized, and I'm like looking at Chucky and what we enjoy about Chucky with the TV show that's going on right now, and previously season one, and how that tone can be nailed down when it's a trickier tone because Chucky's went from kind of straight up horror to a more comical sense. So you kind of have this wide range of something that you want to nail down to try and please a lot of the fans. So you don't really know. It's such a mixture of you don't know really where you're going to go with it, but you got to find that correct dosage. Halloween is legitimately a basic formula, and it just can't seem to be nailed down. I don't think it was really nailed down in these last three films, and it's just like something where, with the caliber of talent that is attached to this, honestly, we should have been three for three, in my opinion. But it's like a lot of talent goes wasted. I mean, looking at what we've been building toward and what we get in Halloween Ends, and to think uh, almost zero resolution for a lot of these characters. I mean, look at Hawk. Just think about Hawkins's story arc here in terms of where he started in 1978 and where he ends up in Halloween Ends. It's just like we get hardly any resolution with any of these characters. They don't really have anything to do in Halloween Ends. These characters that we've been sitting with for two films are very much sidelined for a new character coming into Halloween Ends, and it just seems underwhelming, pretty half baked, and it just if you're going into your final film, you know there's not going to be a next one. You want to have everything wrapped tight in with a pretty bow on it to say, this is what we've been working toward. This is why we've asked the audience to come back every Halloween to sit in the theater and watch what we have presented. And it just does not seem that way. It seems like they threw it all in a trash bag and tried to hand it to you and say, hey, this is what we got.
Yeah, and a couple of minor things I'll say here just to highlight, and then we're gonna jump into spoilers. Um, I felt like of all three, I hardly noticed the Carpenter score in this. I mean,
I
I'm
can't think of
sure it's
anything
there.
really that stuck out in my head.
No, nothing like the shape Hunts Allison, or anything like that. It's like these are. I really just felt like it could have been a subtler tone, but this was one of the first times of this trilogy that I didn't walk out and say, oh my god, that whatever with the film, but that score was incredible, because I felt that way with Kills and 18. It just felt so non-existent. When I go to watch it on Peacock, I will pay attention to that a little bit more, because I think maybe a portion of that could have been just my kind of shock and awe with just what they've been doing with this movie and what they were. So maybe I was a little caught up into that, and I am curious now that we've had 45 minutes to an hour since we saw the film to really sit with it. Now I'm a little bit more interested to go back and watch it, just to see you know what, if there is anything redeemable, because at first viewing, man, like it didn't feel like this was a movie that I would put on very often. It just doesn't
Yeah.
feel like an installment that I could see myself watching. It's, again, I've seen early reviews compare it to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and Halloween Resurrection, and I do see myself kind of leaving it in that camp. Like I still think that to a degree there is still a little bit more quality here than those. Um, but it is one of those things where I just don't see myself watching it at the frequency that I've watched Kills in 18.
Yeah.
And I still will go back and probably watch those two, because as a two-parter, it's good. Like, it works. It's fine. Um, and it's just an overall a pretty big disappointment. And if you want my final thoughts on this, guys, before we jump into spoilers here, I would say this is a stream it. Like, you should definitely, if we have that option, I would say I wouldn't go to the theater to see this. I don't think it's worth the money and the effort, because it's just not satisfying. It just doesn't bring this trilogy home in any capacity. It decides to do something different, and I would hate to say, give it a shot, go spend your money just to be disappointed. Um, it's just I just think that if you do want to watch it on streaming, make your decision then, and then go to the theater to see it. If you end up being one of the people that love it, because I know there's going to be people that probably love how different it is in this take. And I think if maybe this was a different franchise, maybe if this wasn't in this trilogy, maybe this take could have been cool. But like, it's you can't do this. You can't just derail your trilogy to do something different and take all these tones and these setups and things that you had in two films that are so consistent and that are so joined to the hip, and then just throw those all out the window just to tell a new story, um, for half a movie. It's like it just doesn't work. It is no good.
Yeah, it was like they tried to do something different for, 70% of the film, and then we're like, "Oh yeah, we've been building to something, so now let's throw the
Yes.
rest of it back in here." Um, it just doesn't work at all. Like, at least for me, this one's going to be a tough watch to ever go back and revisit. I mean, I'm going to revisit it probably over the next few days just to kind of get a feel for it again, catch anything that maybe I missed. I don't really think there's too much, but it's just one of those ones where it's going to become not much of a fun watch because like you said, this is a well constructed film from that aspect of filmmaking. But for me, it almost becomes less fun because you can't really pick that stuff out, where it's like, going back to Resurrection, which is, yes, a horrible film, but what, Busta Rhymes saying "trick or treat, motherfuckers," it's like one of those. It's a funny moment, and there's none of that kind of fun to be had, I don't feel, in Halloweenends. So it's kind of one of those ones where, am I ever really going to put this on to waste time? I don't see myself doing that because I don't think it's that much fun at all. But they had some interesting stories, and I think that's really where this kind of gets a big X, because it just doesn't work. It's like they had some promising stories, they didn't really achieve anything with those. So I was expecting so much more for this ending of the trilogy here, and we really got nothing. And it's like, they had the potential again. There was potential all throughout these films, but I don't think it was ever actualized in any of them. So overall, like you said, it's available streaming. I would give it a watch on streaming just to kind of, I mean, it's Halloweenends. You might as well give it a watch one time. But overall, yeah, I can't recommend actually going in the theater to see this one.
I agree. But let's move into our spoiler section. We're gonna keep this kind of light because we've only seen this once. We're gonna watch it again, and we're gonna have a larger discussion video coming out this weekend for you guys, where we're gonna talk a little bit more in depth of our thoughts, feelings. Probably not even just about this, but about the overall David Gordon Green trilogy as a whole, and just these last few years we've spent in Haddonfield. Um, Couple of things that I kind of want to hit on. The opening was one of those things where it sets up this idea. It sets up this whole thing where Corey accidentally kills a child, and it is shocking. It is one of those things where it kind of does bring this catalyst to a start, where it's like, let's say, okay, he kills this kid, he's maligned. The almost Haddonfield, the town itself, kind of starts to vilify him, and they more or less start to use him as their next big boogeyman, while Michael is nowhere to be found. And we talked about some of the elements that we did like towards the start of this. We're just kind of seeing the residual effects of Haddonfield a little bit. They don't follow through with it as much in the film. It's more just for this opening, but seeing how, there are people who are, offing themselves, and there's more crime. People were gunned down in a car, stuff like that. Like, it just seems like something isn't right in Haddonfield ever since Michael returned and, he went on his rampage.
Yeah, and I thought that was an intriguing concept. It kind of gives you those Stephen King It vibes, where the town is just off. And I really wish they would have leaned a little more into that because going into the 2018 Halloween, you don't really get that big of a glimpse into Haddonfield. It just seems like any other town. They don't really have that small world building that we get in other installments that we're supposed to forget. I really wish they would have taken advantage of that and kind of. I really think we should have picked up in that kind of sense in terms of maybe people are a little more aggressive. They're on edge all the time just because of the events that have happened. And everyone just seems a little off. The town has been heavily affected. And kind of work your way up to all this because, again, they're throwing in a lot of different ideas at the tail end of this trilogy. And because of what they're doing here, I don't really think we see a lot of it really live up to its full potential. I think we get a little bit of it with that kind of Corey Cunningham and some of the band people that are bullying him, I guess you'd
So
say.
dumb, dude. Like I never bought that. Like I know I leaned over to you at one point and said, "Why the hell is this guy this like at this point in the story he's like what 23? They say he's 21 at the start. So
Yeah,
it's like if this is modern day he's 23, 24 almost. So it's like why the hell is he being bullied by high school kids?
yeah.
Like what the fuck? Like it just I never bought that.
It seemed weird, and like you're saying, it wasn't really believable to me. It just seemed like, let's throw this in here. I think maybe it was also slightly played for laughs. I don't know, because at least that's how I found it. Um, it just did not seem believable in any sense. But kind of, we see that aggressiveness between Corey Cunningham and I don't know these band bullies. I guess I'll call them. I don't know any of their names, but um, e even those instances don't really seem real to me. It's like, they kinda just shoehorn those in, to give, kind of progress the whole Corey Cunningham thing. Obviously, that's how he runs into Michael, but, the concept of the town kind of being a little off, I think, would have been very intriguing to go with. This is to give a positive here, I think, that they do kind of show Haddonfield. They kind of build it up visually, and I was a fan of that. But again, it's something where we get glimpses of it, but we don't really live in it that much. It's like uh, going into Halloween Part Two. We were all over Haddonfield in the night, meeting new characters and kind of sticking with them. We don't really get that much with this film. It's like I thought maybe the DJ Willie would have been maybe a bigger portion of the story or something, and it's like he plays a very minimal role here, and is really just to add to the body count. So it's like we don't really get too much of any of the actual world building inside Haddonfield like I thought we were going to get just based off the trailer.
Yeah, and to kind of we'll save a little bit more of our as we go through the film kind of piece by piece spoiler wise for that discussion video. So I'll just kind of jump around here, but the reason I bring up the opening is because that's kind of the I guess from what I interpreted the connecting piece to really what I think is one of the biggest missteps, and also it is the twist, or I guess not like the twist but the swing of the whole concept here is that at one point Corey's being bullied by the band people, whatever, he gets thrown off a bridge, and Michael, who's living in the sewers as we saw in the trailer, pulls him in there, and they have a transference. And you can see that it looks like Michael kind of touches him and realizes he sees the struggles and the hardship that he's been through and how that kid, he killed him, and suddenly Michael doesn't want to hurt him and he lets him go. And now Corey's changed. Corey's got this how did you say it in the theater? He's like a conduit of sorts for
Yeah,
Michael at this point. He's almost like
he's his
they
henchman, is a minion of
yeah,
kind of.
he's like his buddy. And we joked about this on the Sunday Scaries a few weeks ago, how people had said that that's what it kind of seems like, the impression that's being given. And God, I was disappointed to see that come to light. That I did not want that. I just, of all the ways that you can handle this character, and this, you said it best too. You leaned over and said this was, he wasn't supernatural. Was the way that Michael had been uh, touted this entire time through this franchise, and you know that's just not the case. So he's very much, and I know some people are going to be like, oh well, he took a bunch of gunshots in both the movies. It's like, yeah, I get that, but I understood that that's where we were going by kills, but like, this is not the way that I wanted this to go. I did not want him to have a minion and to have him basically going and getting bodies for him to slaughter. Like, there's legitimately a scene where Michael stabs a character and he's frail and he's weak and he's all fucked up from all his endeavors, and he starts shaking like he's literally just stabbing him, and he's going like, oh my god, oh god, and then he's strong again, and it's like, dude, what the fuck? Like, this is so left field, man. Like, this is not at all satisfying in any way to me of how to handle this character.
It almost seems jarring in a sense when to go back to 2018, where he's been at Smith's Grove since the events of 1978. And, I assume he's been around killers before. So, and he's never had a henchman before. So it's kind of just odd that this is the time and place we pick, and to kind of how he's presented in 2018. Again, more so a normal guy, maybe a little stronger than that, but not necessarily supernatural in any sense. And then after that one, it just seems like we start pivoting, like where in Kills, Laurie gives a speech at the end of the more he kills, the more he transcends. And I really feel like at that point they were saying, we don't know what to do with normal Michael. We've got to add the supernatural element back into him. And that's where we started with Kills and seeing it go full force into Halloweenends. And it creates for this jarring experience of, at least looking at the other installments, of 4, 5, 6, all these other installments, at least they were done by different directors, all of which were trying to achieve something different and believing that maybe this was the last story. So they weren't necessarily leaving it off in the best of hands for the next director. But these 3 films were one singular vision here. And, to have it to be this jarring and disjointed after one, when it's, just the same hands in the pot creating the story arc, it's kind of baffling to me to kind of get this different feels here. And it's like, I don't necessarily believe it was like trying to give us a different experience each film. It really feels like we had no idea where we were going to go when we started the story. So let's just throw some stuff on the paper and see what makes that final draft. And that's honestly the best way I can describe Halloweenends.
Yeah, and I'll get into the last little spoiler we'll touch on for now, just because I don't want this to run too long. But the way they wrap this up, Laurie and Michael have their confrontation towards the end here. Well, to kind of set the stage for you, after Corey's transference with Michael, him and Michael start teaming up, and he brings in people to get him stronger, and then they start killing together, and it's goofy as fuck. And like, I'm sorry, like they could have. There's an idea here, okay? And I don't want to go too far off the rails. Now, Luke, reel me in if I start talking too long. But like, there is an idea here that if you would have started with this, if you would have given us this concept or hinted towards it from the start of this trilogy, I think if you could have pulled that off at some point. You could have. But this, again, is too rushed, too ham-fisted, and just shoved into this last film of a trilogy. Does not work. And so they start killing together, and then Corey is going way down the rabbit hole, very Christine style. He's possessed by the entity, the evil, the shape, and he goes and he tries to kill Laurie. Laurie takes him down, gets him into basically where he's compromised, and then Corey kills himself. And then Michael shows up, and then Laurie and Michael have their confrontation, their battle we've seen in the trailer. And the way they handle this, and I'm not going to talk about the fight right now, but the way they handle how they wrap up Michael's story is just so blatantly disrespectful to the character, I feel. Like it is truly this film makes him an afterthought, and then they just strap his ass to the top of a car and chop him up, and that's it.
And
And they spend I'm sorry, but they spend all 2 movies trying to say we're going to figure out why Michael is the way he is. And I understand they don't have to tell us point blank. I never really want you to tell me point blank. But like, I want a crescendo. I want if you're going to give me a swan song, give me a swan song for this character. Don't just strap him down with a fucking refrigerator, slit open his neck and veins, and then strap him to a car and throw him in a meat grinder. Like, that's like, yeah, he's fucking dead, but like, to what end? Like, it just felt like, so okay, we don't know how to kill him, we don't know what to do, so bye, goodbye, that's it.
and again, that's where I feel like, they were writing this film and then forgot that they it was a Michael Myers kind of story, so they ended up writing this complete film and then having to go back and splice in elements of Michael Myers so that they can make this a Halloween film, because that's really what it feels like, is they focus so much on other things, with Michael being that maybe 15% of the film. Really makes this feel out of line with everything else that we've seen. And the ending here is just so odd, where it's like one of those almost jokes of a couple of guys sitting in a room saying, "What can we do here to make sure he doesn't come back?" Where it's like, "Hey, man, let's cut his head off and then shoot him a billion times and then strap him to a rocket and shoot him into the moon until he explodes." You know what I mean? It's like, it's so much overkill where it's like at one point it just feels like a joke. So it's like, um, even with all the townspeople coming out, and I don't know if it was supposed to be like, oh, it's very surprising moments where we have Julian show up as he's walking, and then obviously the one lady that we had thought died in Kills, where she had to watch her husband die. She's there as well, and it's just like, at this point, I'm just rolling my eyes. Again, more tributes, more callbacks to everything else, when we haven't really paid that much attention to anything really going on into the rest of this. I mean, like, even depending on where you wanted to go with this, it's like, even you could have used other established characters. Like, I'm not that I'm in favor, but like Julian could have been revisited in Halloween Ends, because that could have been another element here, someone who has head trauma. And even Michael picking out someone like Corey, it's like, you think maybe he would have selected someone that had some sort of trauma that he had, whether it was someone that he had spent time in Smith's Grove who had killed a family member or something like that, where this was just an odd random act. So in from Corey's perspective, a complete accident. It wasn't even
I was gonna say
intentional.
it wasn't even intentional, like how Michael's was when he
So
was a
it
child.
it really doesn't make any sense. And again, I this honestly feels like we had no idea where we're gonna go. So let's try and tie things in and give the audience the finish to a story, even though it's gonna be so underwhelming. Which obviously Halloween Ends to us is extremely underwhelming. So overall, this whole epic encounter between Michael and Laurie just doesn't exist for me. And then it's only lived for a very short period. I mean, even in 2018, I feel like they get more of a battle than they do in
It's
Halloween Ends.
18 in retrospective now is a much stronger confrontation. And honestly, I'm gonna say between this and H2O and now in 2018, this is the weakest of the 3. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is absolutely weak and just predictable and boring and short, and it's just, god, it's just, it feels to me like they got to a point where they were again, they had momentum at the start of this trilogy, And as the shooting went on, as the writing went on, they kind of just said, I'm kind of done playing with these toys,
Yep.
and I'm gonna wrap this up for just so it's done, and I'm gonna move on to my Exorcist trilogy now, that we have to look out for from David Gordon Green. And I've said before, I'm not as attached to that property as I am this, but even that being said, this is just this doesn't even a casual fan, I don't see liking this or enjoying this movie.
In like you're saying, casual fan, I could see someone turning on Peacock, and if something's randomly streaming, if this is on TV, um, and there's no context here in terms of I wanted to watch a Halloween film, you could watch this film for a good majority of it before ever realizing that this has Michael Myers in it,
Yeah,
and you wouldn't even know.
like
Um,
you said, you can watch probably 70% of this movie and not know that Michael Myers is in it.
Yep, you could just think it's maybe some random horror, and even the horror elements to this aren't as amped up as you usually see in Halloween films. There's not as much suspense or anything, or uh, any of
I
those
think I
elements.
said in this first viewing, I noticed zero stalking,
Yep,
zero tension in the kills, no build up. It's just a lot of just quick slashes, and it's not even creative. We don't get any of that Michael Myers playfulness or creativity, as I like to call it, where he's like positioning corpses or anything like that. We get none of that. Michael doesn't feel like Michael in
yeah,
this movie. And, I think that's probably to end this review from me, at least. That might be one of the biggest sins, is the fact that I have said nothing but positives on how Michael has been portrayed, and the look, and just the way that they use him, and everything. It's been a lot of the surrounding stuff that has been an issue for me, a lot of the other characters that have been issues for me in this trilogy. And this really just feels like they just dropped off and they said, nope, we're done playing with Michael Myers. We're
yeah,
just going to throw him off to the side. I have the new Corey toy now, and I want to play with him. And it's disrespectful. And it's, as a passionate fan, I'm going to say it's disrespectful. And I'm not trying to sit here and rant or do anything like that, but I just was so disappointed. Really, this is the first of these three that I can genuinely say is a bad movie.
yeah. This one, 2018, like I said, there's a case that can be made for a lot of people who love it, and I'm okay with that. There is some good things in 2018. It's not my cup of tea, but I can see where they were going to go with it, and what they wanted to achieve. Kills um, has its strong points as well. It really falls into that slasher um, film that I think a lot of us were craving.
It wears
And
its heart on its sleeve in
yes,
comparison.
absolutely. Halloween Ends is just this outlier where very uh, disjointed, odd, and doesn't really have that same tone that the other two do. I don't think it really know what it wanted to achieve and what identity it wanted to have in this whole trilogy here. I really just think it was some random film. You talked about, we were on to our new Corey toy, and it really feels like maybe they had the script already written for something else, and then they were like, well, maybe we can alter this to fit the Halloween franchise. It really feels like something like that.
And I won't get into it, but I will save this for the discussion. But I checked out a couple of the people that we share this platform with, their reviews on my way home, as I normally do, just to listen to see what the consensus was and everything. A couple of them did bring up that's something I actually forgot because it's been so long. Is that this was completely rewritten. There was a plan, there was a movie, but because of the delay with COVID, they had more time and they decided to go in this direction over what they were going to do before. So my goal over the next couple days before Saturday is to look into that, research some of that, and just basically cut together this discussion. And I don't know how we want to do it. If you guys want to hop in here and let us know, should we do a live discussion? Do you want to see if we can get some people in here to talk and really get our thoughts out for ends, or should we just record it? Like, let us know in the comments. If you guys don't say anything, we'll decide. But yeah, I really want to look into this and see kind of what the point is, because it just feels like something went amiss here.
Yeah.
And now this film is, like you said, an outlier to the trilogy. It makes no consistent effort to be anything like its sibling films. And yeah, it's unfortunately where we sit at the end of the David Gordon Green trilogy.
I would say that evil did die tonight.
It did, unfortunately, in the worst way possible. Alrighty, guys. Well, that's going to wrap us up here for our review discussion, whatever you want to call this, of Halloweenends. As always, if you want to keep up with us, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SplattercastPod, where you can find all of our latest thoughts, little thought bubbles, conversation pieces, whatever you might find on there. You can keep up with us. As well as you can check out some of the content we've been releasing. We did just discuss Chucky episode 2 yesterday, so we got to talk a little bit about that. We have some more fun Splatterthon content, as we are still in the midst of that, coming to the channel. And of course, with this being the weekend of Halloweenends, even though we didn't like it, we'll still probably be talking quite a bit about it. So keep your eyes out for that. As always, look out for the Sunday Scaries as well. And remember, we are doing the giveaway. So if you are interested, you can just hit that link in the description, enter. All you got to do is comment your favorite horror movie on that video, and you get a chance to win a Splatterthon mug, as well as a copy of the Black Phone on Blu-ray. So that's a lot of fun. This was the big movie this October. Honestly, I think for both of us, this was maybe the pinnacle one we were looking forward to. And it's been a fucking damn good year for horror, and it sucks that Michael couldn't join that party, and I'm disappointed, but it is what it is.
Oh man, we got what do we got? The Grabber and whatever the hell you want to call that thing from Barbarian out there on the dance
the
floor.
the mother is what it's being called.
We have them all out on the dance floor, and Michael's sitting in a chair drinking punch, not joining the party.
Unfortunately. But alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
Remember, stay scared.